Welcome to Crucible Cloudworks Live. My name is Chris, and each week we'll be interviewing professionals in their respective fields to get a behind the scenes look at what their day to day life is like and what it took to get there. It is my goal to empower you to find a role that you feel confident in, and maybe by listening to our guests speak, you too can find your way. Wherever you are right now, you're in the right place. So let's get started. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Today we're interviewing Paris Tu, who works with highly sensitive children. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's nice
Yeah,
to meet you
no.
as well.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. Where are you from originally? Just curious.
I'm originally from Iran, Tehran, Iran, but I
Oh,
live in San Francisco now.
okay. All right. Yeah, okay. So myself, I come from like Canada originally,
Okay.
but now I'm here in the United States as well. So,
Nice.
how do you find San Francisco?
I love it. I absolutely love living here. And every time I think about moving away, um, I find reasons that I want to stay. So
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely has my heart.
How long have you been in the Bay Area?
I've been in the Bay Area since I was little, so a very,
Okay.
very long time. But in San Francisco for, I think, 16 or 17 years now.
Okay. All right. If you don't mind my asking, what was your reason for immigrating to the United States?
Well, it was the Iran War,
Hmm.
Iran-Iraq War, and then also the revolution.
You're right.
And, my parents didn't agree with the government
You're
and they
right.
didn't want to
Right.
be in Iran with the restrictions that were imposed on them. And so my mom left with me and my brother, who was just born. I think he was maybe 3 months old when we left Iran. And then my older brother and my dad followed. But it was
Okay.
mainly because they didn't want to live in the current regime.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my parents were refugees as well, so I
Mm,
understand for a lot of people, it's quite a chaotic upbringing. Do you feel that it
absolutely.
influenced, how you came to your current line of work, or?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Yeah. So I'm a highly sensitive coach. I coach parents of highly sensitive children
Okay.
to help them set their child up for success in life. And the way I came about it is I'm a highly sensitive person myself. Unfortunately, I did not have parents who had the right tools
Hmm.
to parent me with a nurturing and healthy way.
Okay.
And so I just grew up with a lot of issues. I had a lot of traumas that I had to kind of go through and resolve for myself as I grew older. In October of last year, I was laid off from my corporate world and or the corporate job, and I had already started the year before that, I had already started coaching
Right.
highly sensitive people at that corporation, not as my job, but as a volunteer. And then when I was let go, everyone, including the clients that I was seeing on a volunteer basis, were encouraging me to start my own business and
Right.
do this for a living. And I was like, yes, but if I'm going to do this, I want to help children and I want to help children when they're in their formative years.
Okay.
So then I looked into becoming a coach for parents, and I just decided to go for it. And here I
Right.
am.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
really,
there's nothing like making your passion your full-time job, right? And invention is the
absolutely.
mother of necessity. And sometimes I think that a lot of a lot of the stories that we're going to be hearing from the
Right.
things like the pandemic, someone lost their job and had to find something else, or I think
Yeah,
a lot of people have discovered that they can lean on their passions as a full-time source of employment. And
absolutely.
I think it's just a great place to be these days. But I mean, to not try to put too fine of a point on things, what would be the definition of a highly sensitive individual then?
Yeah, that's a great question. So highly sensitive people are very much misunderstood. Um, Not many people know about this personality trait. A lot of people think that it's something that can be changed, but it's not. It's a personality trait. It's in your genes, so there's no way you can change it. And it's just like your eye color. If you're born with blue eyes, you can't change it, right? So
Okay.
same thing, you can't change it. And it has four components. So the first one is depth of processing, which means that you analyze things to the nth degree. You just are a very analytical person, and you are a very observant person. So when you're analyzing, you're just looking at things from every single angle. And then you have overstimulation is the second aspect. And you're overstimulated because you're taking in so much from your surroundings and you feel things so deeply within you. So it's easy to get overstimulated if you don't know how to regulate yourself. And that's what I bring to the table, is not just teaching my clients, what high sensitivity is about, but also helping them accept the personality trait in their child, but be able to nurture it so that they could be successful in life. And, the overstimulation can definitely be something that you can manage through somatic practice.
Okay.
And then the third aspect is empathy. Highly sensitive people are extremely empathetic people. It's not empathy. If you compare someone who's empathetic, who's not highly sensitive, and someone who's highly sensitive and is empathetic, it's a different level altogether. It's like empathy on steroids. And then the last component is being sensitive to various stimuli. So it could be any of your senses could be sensitive. Like for me, it's all five, but it could be just one. So it could be loud sounds, bright lights, some textures, some taste. It could be anything really that any of your five senses, and you only need one of them to be sensitive. But you have to have all four components to be considered a highly sensitive person.
Okay, I understand. And typically for children, as you said, there's genetic components. So these signs would manifest very early in childhood, typically.
Oh yeah, even in the womb.
Okay.
Yeah, I have clients who've told me that they knew they didn't know about high sensitivity until I brought it to their attention. But during the coaching, they would go back and say, "Oh my God, now it makes sense that my child would do this in the womb." And for me, it's so fascinating to hear these stories.
Is there any crossover then between highly sensitive children and perhaps other diagnoses that are out there? Like, perhaps autism, people on the spectrum, that sort of thing.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So that's I'm doing some episodes on autism versus high sensitivity and ADHD versus high sensitivity. As I mentioned, the first differentiator is that one is a personality disorder. I'm sorry, one is a personality trait, and the other ones are medical conditions.
Okay.
So that's the first thing that differentiates them. But a lot of doctors, because they don't know much about high sensitivity, if at all, they misdiagnose the children or even an adult, and they think that they have autism. They're on the spectrum of autism, or that they have ADHD. So that's why I always encourage my clients before. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not giving any medical advice. Right. But before you go through like taking medication and all that, it's an easy test to find out whether you're highly sensitive or not, or whether you have a child who's highly sensitive or not. So take the 5 minutes it takes to educate yourself, because if your child is not autistic, or if your child doesn't have ADHD, it's a very easy fix. It takes most clients work with me for 3 months, and that's all they need to be able to parent their child in a nurturing and healthy way.
Right, because I think other than the symptoms we've described, what you're describing is it's almost like it's mutually exclusive, right? Because even though, let's say, two children are unable to sit still, they're both restless. I mean, there would be a world of difference then between someone who is highly sensitive and someone who would have, ADHD, right?
Absolutely. One is because, like I said, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to go into the medical aspect of things, but I'll talk about what I'm an expert on, which is high sensitivity. High sensitivity is a personality trait. So as long as you know how to manage the personality trait, you don't need any medication. It's really easy to manage your overstimulation, which is really the only negative aspect of being highly sensitive. People think, oh my God, I don't want to be told that I'm highly sensitive because that has a negative connotation, which is exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing for a living.
Right.
Because I want to educate people that there's so
it's not a bad
much
thing.
beauty
Right.
around being highly sensitive. And there's just one tiny aspect of it that is not so positive, but that's controllable. You do some, somatic practice 5 minutes a day as part of your hygiene routine, and it's pretty much eliminated.
Okay. So, I mean, to bring it to yourself then, how did you find out that you yourself were highly sensitive in this regard?
Yeah. So I saw an ad on Facebook in 2019.
Okay.
And it was an ad for Dr. Elaine Aron's, I think it was a weekend class, all day, the entire weekend. And it was a workshop.
Right.
And so, sorry, I speak so many languages, and sometimes I forget like the word that I want to use in English. I forget. I remember it in some other languages. So bear with me there. But yeah, I love Dr. Elaine Aron. She changed my life for the better. Because of her, I went from being a person that had a lot of trauma, a lot of fears, just was not a very happy person. And despite how hard I would try to be happy and just pretend that everything is okay, deep inside, I was not a happy person. But because of her, a light bulb went off, right? When I realized I'm a highly sensitive person, my world changed. And, I have goosebumps right now. And that's what I want to do for other people as well, is to help them realize the beauty of this personality trait and help them understand it, because that's what Dr. Elaine Aron did for me. And God bless her. She changed my life. And I can't tell you, my life is dramatically better because of her, and because of the fact that I finally, for the first time in my life, understood why I did things the way I did and why I was so different. Because highly sensitive people are only 20% of the global population. So that means 80% of the population is not like us. So as you can imagine, you grow up going, oh, I don't fit in. I'm not like anybody here.
Right.
And of course, now that I'm embracing high sensitivity, I'm attracting a lot of highly sensitive people into my life. So now I know a lot of highly sensitive people. So I know a lot of people like myself. But growing up in my 20s, in my 30s, didn't know a single highly sensitive. Well, my family is highly sensitive, but somehow also very different than my family, although we're all highly sensitive. But besides my family, I didn't know anyone who was like.
So if your family is highly sensitive, is it like, as you said, it's a trait, it's a genetic component that is passed down, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and most likely, if you have a highly sensitive child and they're your biological child, chances are either you or your spouse or both partners are highly sensitive. Okay.
Is there a reason perhaps that the knowledge of, high sensitivity people is not very commonplace, right? Is there a reason perhaps that even the autism, the spectrum is known far more now?
I know. And it's really hurts me so much that so many people go having the life that I used to have, which is extremely painful. Let me tell you, it is very painful to know that you don't belong anywhere, that there's no one like you anywhere that you look. It's an extremely painful experience to go through. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, a lot of us go through that. Most of my clients, if not all, have gone through it. And so the reason is that, first of all, there's a negative stigma behind being highly sensitive. It's kind of like if you look back to 10 years ago, where people wouldn't talk about mental health issues that they had, is similar to that. But the sad part of high sensitivity is that there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's absolutely zero reasons, except for the overstimulation, which again, you're able to control.
Yeah.
If you know how to, if you have the right tools, you can almost, I wouldn't say 100% eliminate it, but I can guarantee you that you could bring it down so much that you basically don't even realize that you're overstimulated anymore.
Right.
Because the intensity is gone. But so it's really sad that we live in a society, and it's not just the U.S. It's everywhere in the world that we live in a society.
Yeah, I mean, myself and my own, challenges growing up with disabilities in Asian culture. I mean, certainly, I would say in other countries it's probably even worse, right, as far as acceptance goes. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So that's my hope, is that I can bring light into people's darkness, and I could help them turn around their life just the way Dr. Elaine Aron did for me.
That's fascinating. So the thing is, I mean, already from what you're describing, I could think of at least 2-3 people I know of that maybe highly sensitive. I mean, one of them spoke to me recently, and she's all like, hey, my therapist says I might be autistic. And it's like, well, it's kind of late in life to learn that now, isn't it? Right? And I think for a lot of people that, overstimulation and, it's almost like an uncontrolled empathy, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Are there any basic techniques that you focus on first when accepting a new patient, or?
Yeah. So the first thing I do is I offer a 15-minute consult, where the patient or the client comes in, and basically we do an evaluation to see if they're highly sensitive or if they have a child who's highly sensitive. And that test is developed by Dr. Elaine Aron, and it takes 5 minutes to take the test. But I don't recommend that you do it yourself. I recommend that you do it with a professional such as myself, because if you don't do it properly, the results could be skewed.
Right. It's like those sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah. No.
It sort of reminds me of those Myers-Briggs tests you would find on the internet, and then people keep redoing it to try to find the result that they think they are. So I think it's something that you would need an objective analysis on, correct?
Yeah, and you need help with the questions, because you need to think back as far back as you can remember. For example, if you're an adult, I can think back to pre-kindergarten. In my case, not everybody has this type of memory, but I do. So I could think back that long, or else if I can't, I go to my parents and say, hey, when I was a baby, what did I do? Because it's really accurate more when you were a baby, because as we grow older, we learn to adapt to our environment. And so then the answer could be different now, but it wasn't when you were a baby. So, so that's why it's important that you go back and think as far back as possible, or go ask your caregivers if you can't remember.
Okay. So the thing is, as you said, it's high sensitivity. It's not like a light bulb that goes on and off, right? But at the same time, and again, I'm not intending to sound confrontational. I'm just trying to understand.
No, absolutely.
You've said that because your personality is shaped over time, maybe some of the edges of this high sensitivity get worn off, perhaps, or?
No, it's just that you learn to adapt to your environment. So basically what you do is you still have the trait. You still have all 4 components.
Right.
But you learn to adapt to your environment. So you may have learned, for example, I don't know, in my situation, I would get very emotional when somebody would hurt my feelings, or if somebody was very disrespectful in front of others, I would very easily want to cry. So of course I can't cry in a corporate environment, although I have cried in a corporate environment. But it's only because, and it was very, very few times over the course of my 25 plus career. Right. But I learned not to cry, even though I really, really wanted to cry. But I learned not to. I learned to suppress that emotion until I could get somewhere where I could release it. So stuff like that, you learn to figure out, okay, I'm not in an environment where I can show my emotions. It's not acceptable. Although I tell my clients, every emotion should be acceptable. And especially in the household where, the child is at home, they should be able to have every single emotion that they're feeling, and no emotion should be looked upon in a negative way with a highly sensitive person.
Okay, yeah, because the more I think about it, I as I said, I know a few people that would match a lot of the criteria you've described, but one of them I'm thinking of in particular doesn't show empathy the same way, but that could naturally be a trauma response there as well.
Absolutely.
Right. So yeah, that kind of.
And I tell my clients, sometimes my clients will go, oh, well, my child doesn't have empathy. So therefore, okay, if they have to have all 4 components, he doesn't have empathy. So therefore he's not highly sensitive. And then I say, wait a minute, let's talk about not towards people, but towards animal. This child is young, so you have to think about that. Is the child empathetic towards animals? Yeah. How do they react with animals? Oh, yeah, they're super empathetic towards animals. They can't bear to see an animal hurt. Okay, then the child has empathy. It's just that his empathy is towards animals, because towards people is too much for a child to bear, because they can feel so strongly that they don't want to go there, and they don't go there. Sometimes it feels too much,
Yeah, and I could also easily see to a lot of highly sensitive children that perhaps they perceive other people as almost threats, right? So they have to regulate it, But as you said, I mean, everybody loves puppies, right? So I mean, that's part of it. So I guess so. In addition to that, what other inhibitions or what other common pitfalls do highly sensitive children run into growing up?
So the 2 common ones that I see parents do with their highly sensitive children that they definitely should not be doing is calling their child shy, or calling their child, oh, they take time to warm up. They don't warm up very easily. Right. These are actually, they're not truthful or factual, I should say, because they don't know the aspects of high sensitivity. So if your child goes somewhere where they've never been before, the depth of processing is going to come into play. What does that mean? They're going to look around. They're going to observe and analyze. Is this a safe place for me? Because highly sensitive people, whether they're a child or an adult, the number one thing that they're always concerned about, am I safe? Right. That's it. That's like number one. Even me, I'm an adult. I know how to take care of myself. I'm a very independent person. If I go somewhere new, I analyze everything. Who's here? What's their energy like? And all of that is because I want to know if this is a good fit for me to be here, because I want to know that I'm safe. Right. And safe is not about physical safety. It's also about emotional safety.
It's almost like a sense of belonging. Right. They want to feel welcome in a place.
They want to feel like they're going to be comfortable. They're going to be safe, and they're going to be comfortable, and this is their place to be. If they don't like it, they will not participate. So if the person says, "Oh, my child takes time to warm up," they don't go into a party right away. They are hesitant into entering that home because, oh, I've never been here before. I don't know these people. I don't, this whole thing is new to me. They're going to take time to analyze. And that analysis is not because they're, they are taking their time to warm up. It's just that they need to do that, their depth of processing, and determine for themselves whether this is a place that they want to be or not. So shyness and, they take time to warm up. Most of the time, they're not correct when you're using it for a highly sensitive child.
Interesting. So the thing is, I guess, not to look at the bad side of things always, but are there any adverse side effects, perhaps, if a child is not treated properly as a highly sensitive child?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, highly sensitive people, if they've had a traumatic experience as a child, and traumatic experiences, if you don't parent them in a nurturing and healthy way, in a loving, punishment-free way, they will develop a lot of anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts. They could become addicts. All of this is very much, it's a risk that you take.
Okay.
It's very likely that your child could get one of these, have one of these issues later in life. Even as a child, I have clients who come to me and they're very scared because their child tells them, I don't want to live. They're not saying I'm going to take my own life. They're not saying that, but they're saying, I don't want to live.
Right.
At a very young age, which, it's, I got goosebumps again. It's so sad. It's so heartbreaking for a parent to hear that from their child. But as a parent, you have so much power to help your child. And it's not hard once you learn. It's just about accepting your child and learning to use a different parenting technique.
Okay. So, I mean, not to give away any of your secret sauce, perhaps, but I mean, what would be one of the basic exercises that you would teach a child to, adapt or maybe even just counter the overstimulation, let's say?
For a child, I would do, depending on their age, I would do simple somatic exercises.
Okay.
Especially if they're going to school, they will get overstimulated. School is at the number one place for children where they get overstimulated.
Yeah, I've got a lot of reservations with the way school is set up. So it's I think it punishes a lot of children, especially boys, I believe, because children are not designed to sit still, right? So
and also some children really need to be treated in a certain way to be set up for success, because they have real issues. Like this is not something that they make up. Like when the child says, it's too loud here for me, and you don't think it's loud, it does not mean it's not loud for the child.
Yeah.
It's loud for them. If they're saying it's loud, you gotta believe them. If they're saying, I have a stomach ache and I need to call my mom, you have to believe them. Stomach aches are very common for highly sensitive children.
Okay.
So, it really bothers me when schools don't educate themselves on high sensitivity, because they really should. They have that responsibility for a child that's attending their school to be at least knowledgeable. If you don't want to do anything about it, that's a different thing, but at least educate yourself on it.
Okay. What about adults? I know you coach primarily children. Maybe it's because you see the most results, but do adults benefit from coaching?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, I only work with adults. I do my work through the adults.
So okay. So you're giving...
Parents. So it's because it's all about the parents, right? It's all about your parenting technique, and it's all about how you parent your child.
Oh, okay.
So, and it's good. I always tell my clients, please educate your child so that they know about their personality trait. Don't be afraid. Don't think that it's negative. That's something that you're projecting onto your child. Try it. You don't have to tell them everything, but you could say, like, in a positive light, you can say, when they do something that is because of their high sensitivity, just explain that to them. It's okay that you're doing this. It's because of your personality trait, so that the child learns about this personality trait early on. Okay. But just quickly going back to your question about which somatic exercise is good for a child, because I didn't answer that question, is what I do. I recommend very simple techniques, somatic practices, because somatic practice has hundreds of exercises that you could, it's comprised of hundreds of various exercises. But for a young child, I recommend something that is easy, like stroking their face, like doing this motion until they yawn is a very soothing motion. Like even as an adult, if you do this when you're overstimulated, it brings down your nervous system. It just like grounds you, and it makes you feel really good. It has a very nice sensation, and it very quickly helps you get regulated.
That's
you have to do it until you yawn. It doesn't work until the yawning is the important part.
Okay. I guess in the case of highly sensitive adults, are there other techniques that they can use that are perhaps more advanced than children, or?
Yeah. So it's a little bit funny to show you, but I'll show you. I will look really strange to you, but I'll show you. It's the best way to regulate yourself.
Okay.
And you can, as an adult, you can do this anywhere, right? As long as like you can go to the restroom, for example, or somewhere private. I'm not saying do this in public because people will think you're crazy if they don't know
Right.
what you're doing. But basically you hold out your finger, you look at it straight on, and then only with your eyes, you follow the finger all the way until you're comfortable, and you hold it there until you yawn. You do the same thing. And I yawn fast because I do this exercise on a daily basis.
Okay.
You do that for as long as you like. I do it every single day. It's part of my hygiene. Brush my teeth, wash
Right.
my face. Right before I go to bed, I do my somatic practice for 5 minutes. And
Okay.
if you do a somatic practice for 5 minutes, and you don't have to do the same one, you could use whatever it is that you like. If you do this for 5 minutes, I can guarantee that you will not have problems with controlling your emotions. I shouldn't say control, regulating your emotions,
Okay.
regulating your nervous system.
Interesting. Like just hearing everything, it makes me process and makes me think that I think a large challenge perhaps for a lot of sensitive people is just the inability to communicate it, right? Because you're
Yeah.
feeling all these things, you have all these sensations coming in, but you can't communicate it. You don't know how to express it. I think in even language itself, as we mentioned, other countries, other cultures may have different ways they may not even have the language to describe it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, actually, it's very a fascinating topic because a lot of people don't have, even adults, they don't have the vocabulary for the various emotions that they feel.
Okay.
Dr. Brene Brown talks about this in one of her books. I've read all her books, so I can't remember which book it was. I think it was in the Atlas of the Heart. And she talks about how most Americans only have 4 words to describe their emotions. It's like happy, sad, angry, and one other thing. So it's 4 words to describe your emotions. You can have, 25 different emotions. And if you only know 4 of them, how are you supposed to help yourself?
Right.
So I have actually developed a document that I always give to my clients that have children, and even to adults, really. Adults need it just as much as children, where it lists all the various emotions. And I've just made it into a graphic, so it's fun for kids to look at that.
Right.
They get it laminated. They put it up in their room. They look at it every single day. And before you know it, they have that thing memorized, so they don't need to even look at it. But initially, they need to see it all the time. So I asked my clients to post it in their room, laminate it, post it in their room. And then next to that, I have, how do you process your emotions? So there's steps that you need to take to process your emotion, because if you don't process your emotion, what happens is your emotion get basically they stay in your body, because our emotions get trapped in our body at a cellular level even. So it would be very challenging for you to be able to remain regulated, because if you're not processing your emotions are getting trapped. They're getting trapped.
Right.
And before you know it, you're going to erupt like a volcano. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. I personally have had it many, many times, where I'm suppressing my emotions and it's building up. And somebody says the smallest thing to me that upsets me, and there I go. I just go, it's like I erupt like a volcano. And that could be completely prevented if you know how to process your emotions.
Right. I guess it's like they say sometimes in therapy, it's okay to feel angry, but just don't go to sleep angry, right? You don't want that to carry over, right?
No, you don't want your emotions to be stuck in your body.
Right.
It's not healthy. That's where diseases come from, is unprocessed emotions. There are a lot of studies done on this. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I've done a lot of studying. I've read so many books, and I've very much educated myself because I needed to heal myself.
Right.
I had a lot of healing to do. So I've been working on myself since I was early 20s, is when I started working on myself. And because I didn't want to have the life my parents had. My
Right.
parents, to this day, have the same issues that they talked about when I was little. And I saw them and I saw how much they're suffering. Even today, they're suffering with the same exact things that they suffered when I was little. So I saw my parents and I said, I do not want to be like them. I don't want to suffer like they do. If I see that I have an issue, I want to learn how to fix that issue for myself. So I educated myself a lot, and I learned that if you don't process your emotion, the number one cause of having disease is actually unprocessed emotions.
Okay.
So it's really, really important. If you don't want to get sick, if you don't want to have, various diseases, is you got to process your emotions.
That's fascinating. So going back to your practice, how do you most often meet new clients?
So it's usually by word of mouth.
Okay.
However, like I said, because I want to educate my clients as quickly as possible. So
Right.
I encourage them to sign up for once a week for 3 months, is the commitment that I ask for. And they're done. By 3 months, they're good to go. And all they need is they'll engage with me as needed basis afterwards. But it's very rare that they need to re-engage with me on a weekly basis again. So after a while, you do need to start looking for clients as well. But initially it was all word of mouth. And then now, just about a month ago, I ended up hiring someone who's helping me reach more people and also find new clients.
Okay. Interesting. Are you strictly limited to local clients, or do you take clients online? Or
I take clients from all over the world. Yeah,
Okay.
because it's most of my clients are virtual, and even if they live in the Bay Area,
Right.
they still don't want to drive to come in.
Yeah. There may not be any advantages necessarily because from what you're sounding like, from what it sounds like, it seems that, let's say 80% of your work is almost purely educational, right? I mean, there is some therapeutic stuff involved, and as far as, teaching techniques and everything else like that. But it sounds like for the most part, it's just educational. And it sounds like the experience that a lot of your clients will have is like just, they'll meet you, they'll get the light bulb moment. That's, hey, this explains me. This is what I've been looking for all my life. Right?
Exactly. And then also the thing is, like, each client is different. Each child is different, even if they're highly sensitive. As I mentioned, for example, I have 2 siblings and they're both highly sensitive, but they're very, very different than I am, vastly different than I am. So because of the uniqueness of every individual, my coaching is very much tailored to their unique needs.
Okay.
So no 2 clients are the same. Besides the initial explanation of what high sensitivity is, that's the 4 components that determines high sensitivity that was developed by Dr. Elaine Aron. Besides that, everything else is very tailored.
Interesting. So, I mean, not to speak of our past lives, perhaps, but certainly, did you find your past experience with corporate work influenced your coaching style or your ability to communicate any? Or
Oh yeah, I mean, I learned a lot through working in the corporate environment. Being a highly sensitive person and working in the corporate world is really, really hard. It's quite challenging because you have abilities that other people don't have, and people don't necessarily believe you. So you have to really prove yourself. For example, I can see things that others don't see. Like, I'm working on a software application, and the client is asking for certain requirements, and I see all of a sudden, but if we had this capability, if the software could do X, Y, and Z, that would really benefit our client and their clients. They're the end users. But because I was the only person and I was new to the organization, I had to prove that we should add that requirement because
Right.
nobody's asking for it. The client is not asking for it. Engineering is not coming up with that idea. My role is not even to deal with requirements. And here I am saying, oh, we should have this requirement or this
Right,
functionality. So that's challenging. It's challenging when you're right and you know that this should be done, but you don't know how to explain it because nobody sees what you see. And sometimes it's scary too, because you're like, is there something wrong with me? Like, how come nobody else sees what I see? Because it's so easy. Like, it's like totally common sense and logical that we would do this.
Yes.
So how come nobody else sees it? So it can be scary as well. But the corporate world definitely helped me a lot to be the person that I am. I learned a lot of it through pain and suffering, a lot of it through pain and suffering with, people not understanding me and not respecting the fact that I'm highly sensitive. And, a lot of times people would tell me, oh, you need to, grow thicker skin, or you're too sensitive. Oh my God, you're so sensitive. And it would just break my heart when people would say that to me, because that's my core person, that's who I am. And you're basically saying I'm not good because I'm sensitive, that should change my core of who I am. But lucky for me, I think I took after my grandma. She was an extremely strong woman. And so lucky for me, I learned to be myself and be my authentic self despite how I was being treated.
That's great. I guess in that vein, are there any, I know every highly sensitive individual would be different, but are there perhaps careers or roles that you feel they would be better suited for in
absolutely.
modern day and age?
Absolutely. I just did an episode on that I believe releases next week. And yes, absolutely. No, I'm sorry. That episode just ended. Today is the last day. Today is the last episode of that series, where I talk about how to select a career for if you're a highly sensitive person or if you have a child who's highly sensitive. But the things to look for is, I highly recommend that you sit down and write down all the things that you're strong at. This is the things that you were born with, not things that you've learned necessarily. Add those too, but think back and think about yourself. Who are you at your core? For example, with me, I see subtleties that other people don't see, which is very common for highly sensitive people. So I'm positive that probably 99% of highly sensitive people have it. So we see subtleties that others don't see, which is extremely important in work. We're extremely analytical people. We have empathy and compassion, which is amazing if you're a leader. You must have those two to be a good leader, in my opinion. I highly recommend that people, as much as possible, be your own boss, have your own business, if it's possible. My dad told me this when I was little, and unfortunately, I didn't listen to him because I thought, I don't know how to be an entrepreneur. I don't know how to bring clients for myself. And now that I'm doing it, I'm like, oh my God, my dad was right. My life would have been so different if I had done this from the beginning, where I opened up my own business from the get-go. So if you can, give it a shot when you're younger, because why not? That's the best time.
That's the best time to fail.
Yeah. You have very little to lose. If it doesn't work out, you go to and find another job. But try it. I would say, number one, be your own boss.
Okay.
Number two is just focus on your strength. I don't know why in the corporate world, my experience was, instead of my managers using my strength, and not all companies, by the way, when I worked at Sun Microsystems for the first 14 years of my career, where I worked at Sun Microsystems, and that company was phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah.
they treated me so well, and they treated everybody really well. Like, I don't know a single person that worked at that company who had a bad experience.
Yeah.
But in general, after that, companies wanted me to do things that were not my strength. It's like asking a fish to climb a tree. Of course, they're not going to be good at that.
Right,
That's not
right.
what they're built to do. So figure out what you're built to do by writing down all of your inherent strengths. And then, of course, whatever you learned on top of that, that's just icing on the cake.
Right. Yeah. To be honest, I mean, in the technology world, I see that more and more where, you know, they're treating that's why I hate the term human resources, right? Like people aren't resources, and yet they're being treated more and more like interchangeable widgets, even on a project, right? Like the whole like agile thing is, hey, any widget can come and pick up this unit of work at any time, right? And it's after a while, I've always felt it gets counterproductive, but you know, I mean,
yeah. I do agree with you. I think that human resources, I don't like that terminology either, but also I don't like how they're not inclusive. You know, they don't look at, for example, I asked a lot of HR people, what is high sensitivity? They don't know. I didn't find a single person that knew what high sensitivity was. So how could you have, you're going to have, you know, 20% of the global population are highly sensitive. You are going to have highly sensitive people in your company.
Right.
You just can't avoid it.
Right.
So how could you not know about it?
Because much less, you know, be willing to accommodate it for it somehow, right?
Yeah. But at least be knowledgeable about it so that, you know, okay, this person is, you know, behaving this way because of, oh, okay, they're highly sensitive. This is the norm for them, for example.
Do you think that perhaps awareness of high sensitivity as a personality trait is going to be growing as the years progress? Or
I really hope so. That's what I'm dedicating the rest of my life to. So I'm really hoping that I'm doing the right thing and that I can make a difference. And I can, you know, I always believed, even when I was a child, and people would tell me, or when I was younger too, people would tell me, oh, one person doesn't make a difference.
Right.
You know, why are you trying so hard? One person, it's not going to make a difference. And I said, yes, I make a difference. If I can change one person's life, I have made a difference.
Yeah. And
that to me has stayed with me. So but I'm hoping that I can really help people and also help companies, medical organizations, you know, doctors, dentists, all, you know, schools, to educate them so that they're aware of high sensitivity and they use their people more effectively and efficiently. You know, they have amazing people that are working for them, but they're not using them properly. They're underutilizing them and they're not setting them up for success. So I would love to be able to help those organizations as well.
That's fascinating, because the thing is, I think a lot of things you've raised and identified would be, you know, very key to just helping people live their best life. Right?
Absolutely.
Even if it's just, you know, in the workplace and you can get a little bit more productivity out of people by understanding them, I think that's key, right? So.
Oh, I think you can get a lot more productivity out of highly sensitive people if you know how to manage them properly.
Okay. Well, I mean, maybe that's an idea for your next book. You know, I mean, I think I think a lot of people in the corporate space are still struggling with the I mean, even after you even after an issue is brought up, you know, you still need practical ways of dealing with it. So it's almost like if you could publish a corporate guide of, you know, somatic exercises, but for managers to deal with highly sensitive people, maybe that's a step forward, right? So
just understanding, seriously, it just with me going in and talking for an hour is huge. They gain so much knowledge in that 1 hour that they can apply right away.
Right.
I mean, and they will see the difference right away. That's the good thing, is that you don't have to do, you know, hours and hours of training.
Yeah.
Get the results that you're looking for. You can get the results right away.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a big takeaway, because I mean, it's not like already companies are having like, week-long seminars about like,
Yeah.
diversity, stuff like that. But I think,
Yeah.
as you said,
Yeah.
even 15 minutes
Yeah.
of our discussion, I feel just so much more enlightened now about the issue. So,
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you.
I guess, just to try to end this on a lighter note, if we were to make you queen of the world for a day, right, and you could do one thing, one edict, one mandate to advance the cause of highly sensitive individuals, what would that be?
I would say that I would make it a mandate for every organization who has, I don't know, even like a small number, if 5 or greater employees, whether that organization is a school, a medical office, whatever it is, I would ask them to take a 1-hour training on high sensitivity.
I think that's actually not too bad. For a fraction of a second, I thought you were about to say, "Oh, they must hire at least X number of high sensitivity people." But
No,
as you said,
just
they're
being
20% of the
educated.
population, so they're hiding in plain sight, right? And
Yeah,
I think, just getting the word out
Especially-
is the key. So
absolutely. And especially if it's a creative field, because highly sensitive people tend to be extremely creative people.
Mhm.
So if you're in a creative field, most likely many of your employees are highly sensitive.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we'll start with like the design studios, the fashion, and we'll kind of branch out from there, right? So
Yeah.
okay. Once again, thank you so much, Paris. This was a
course.
fascinating conversation, and as your message gets out, I'm just glad to be another platform that can carry it. So
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you inviting me to your podcast. I enjoyed the conversation we had today, and thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
oh, for sure, we'll definitely have to have you back to dive into this fascinating subject in more detail. So
Oh, I would love that. Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Your Salesforce org a second look. Thank you for subscribing. We look forward to seeing you on our next episode.